The great hall on Zephyria Prime stretched far beyond what human eyes could see. Crystal walls reached toward a purple sky, and the floor gleamed like polished silver. Hundreds of alien beings filled the massive space, their voices creating a strange music of clicks, hums, and whistles. Ambassador Kethver stood at the center of it all. His blue skin shimmered under the bright lights, and his forearms moved as he talked. Each arm held a different device that projected images into the air above the crowd. The other aliens leaned forward in their seats, eager to hear what he had to say. "My friends," Kethvar began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "Today we examine the most amusing discovery in recent cycles." Jake Morrison sat in a small booth high above the main floor. The human delegation had been given this space to watch the proceedings, though they were not allowed to speak. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Park adjusted her recording device for the 10th time. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. "They are about to make fun of us again," Jake whispered to her. Lisa nodded but said nothing. She had been studying alien cultures for 5 years, but this was her first time seeing the Galactic Council in person. The sheer size of it overwhelmed her. There were beings here from 50 different worlds, each one looking down on humanity. Kethver raised one of his arms, and the hall fell silent. "Behold the humans of Terra," he announced. The air above him filled with images of Earth. Hurricanes spun across blue oceans. Volcanoes erupted, sending lava flowing down mountainsides. Lightning split dark skies, while tornadoes tore across flat lands. The alien audience began to laugh. The sound was unlike anything humans had ever heard. Some species clicked their teeth together. Others made low rumbling sounds deep in their throats. The insect-like Kriktar rubbed their legs together, creating a high-pitched whine. "Look at this world they call home," Kethvar continued. He gestured, and new images appeared. Massive storms covered half a continent. Earthquakes split the ground open. Floods swept away entire forests. A tall, thin alien with gray skin stood up in the crowd. "How do they survive such conditions?" she asked. "That is the best part," Kethver replied. "They do not simply survive. They fight back against their world every single day. Watch this." The images changed again. Now they showed human cities. Buildings reached toward the sky despite earthquakes that could knock them down. Ships crossed oceans where storms could sink them in minutes. People walked through deserts where the heat could kill them, and across frozen lands where the cold was just as deadly. "They live on a Deathworld," said a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish made of light. "No civilized species could develop on such a planet." More laughter filled the hall. Jake's hands turned to fists as he watched the aliens mock his home. Every image they showed, every storm and disaster, was something he had lived through. He had been born in Florida and survived 3 major hurricanes before his 10th birthday. He had served in the military in places where the heat reached 130 degrees during the day and dropped to freezing at night. That gravity alone would crush most of us, added a creature that looked like a walking tree. And their atmosphere burns with poison. "Oxygen," Lisa whispered to Jake. "They think our oxygen is poison." Kethver nodded at the tree creature. "Exactly right, friend Veltar. Their air would kill most species in minutes. Their water falls from the sky with such force it can destroy buildings. Their very ground moves beneath their feet without warning." He paused and looked around the hall. "And yet they believe they deserve to join our council. They think they belong among civilized races." The laughter grew louder. Some aliens fell from their seats, overcome with amusement. Others hit the floor with their appendages, creating thunderous applause. "They have no advanced technology," Kethvar continued. "They still burn fossil fuels to power their machines. They fight wars over water and land. They cannot even control their own weather. A small furry creature near the front raised a tiny paw. What weapons do they possess? Primitive chemical explosives mostly, Kethver replied. They throw metal at each other at high speeds. Very crude. They also have some nuclear devices. But they are afraid to use them because they might damage their precious Deathworld. This brought fresh waves of laughter from the crowd. Jake watched his homeworld, displayed like a horror show for alien entertainment. Every feature that made Earth dangerous was presented as proof the humans were too primitive for galactic society. The aliens saw hurricanes and earthquakes as signs of a broken world. They looked at human cities and saw desperate creatures clinging to survival. But Jake saw something different. He saw a species that had learned to build in earthquake zones and make those buildings stronger each time they fell. He saw people who had mapped every hurricane path and learned to predict them months in advance. He saw a race that had turned a Deathworld into a garden through pure determination. In conclusion, Kethver announced, a human application for council membership is denied. They represent everything we have evolved beyond. Chaos, violence, and constant struggle against nature instead of harmony with it. The vote was unanimous. Not a single species spoke in favor of humanity. As the session ended and the aliens began to leave, Jake remained in his seat. Lisa packed up her equipment, but she could see the anger burning in his eyes. They have no idea what they just did, Jake said quietly. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Jake stood up and looked down at the departing aliens. Most of them had lived their entire lives on perfect worlds where nothing ever went wrong. They had never faced a real challenge or adapted to survive impossible conditions. They think our world made us weak, Jake said. They do not understand that it made us strong. Lisa looked at the images of Earth still floating in the air. Storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, and floods. To the aliens, these were signs of chaos and danger. But to her, they were the forces that had shaped humanity into something unique in the galaxy. What happens now? She asked. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Now we show them what humans can really do. 3 days passed after the council meeting. Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Park spent most of that time in their assigned quarters, a small but comfortable room in the diplomatic section of the space station. The walls were a soft blue color that was supposed to be calming, but Jake found it annoying. A soft chime sounded at their door. Jake looked up from the report he was writing. Come in, he called. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, and Ambassador Kethver stepped inside. His blue skin seemed to glow under the room's lights, and his forearms carried various devices. Behind him walked 2 other aliens Jake had seen at the council meeting. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Park, Kethver said, his voice coming through a small translator device on his chest. I hope you are comfortable. As comfortable as prisoners can be, Jake replied. Kethver's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. You are not prisoners. You are guests who have been denied membership. There is a difference. Lisa stood up from her chair and moved closer to Jake. She had studied alien body language, and something about Kethver's posture worried her. What do you want? She asked. I come with an opportunity, Kethver said. He gestured with one of his arms, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a planet covered in storms and jagged mountains. We would like to offer your species a chance to prove yourselves. Jake studied the rotating image. The planet looked hostile, but not much worse than some places on Earth. What kind of chance? One of the other aliens, a tall gray creature with no visible eyes, stepped forward. The survival concordat, it said in a voice like wind through leaves. An ancient tradition of our council. Explain it, Lisa said. Kethver waved his arm again, and the image changed. Now it showed a complex document covered in alien writing. Representatives from different species are placed on challenging worlds. They must survive and complete specific tasks. Those who succeed prove their species worthy of galactic citizenship. The third alien, a creature that looked like a walking crystal, made a sound like breaking glass. The translator rendered it as laughter. Most species find it quite easy, the crystal being said. Our worlds have prepared us well for any challenge. Jake felt his anger rising again. What makes you think we would be interested? Because, Kethver said, it is your only chance. Refuse, and humanity remains forever excluded from galactic society. Accept and succeed, and we will reconsider your application. Lisa moved to the hologram to get a better look at the document. Her training in alien languages helped her understand some of the symbols. What are the specific requirements? She asked. Simple survival tasks, said the gray alien. Establish shelter. Find food sources. Maintain communication with orbital monitors. Survive for 60 standard galactic days. A numbers translated in Lisa's head. 60 galactic days equaled about 75 Earth days. Not an impossible length of time, but long enough for things to go wrong. What world would we be sent to? Jake asked, the crystal being made its glass-breaking laugh again. Kepler 442c. We call it a moderately challenging environment. The hologram shifted to show detailed scans of the planet. Jake studied the data streams flowing beside the image. The surface temperature ranged from -40 degrees to over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere was breathable, but filled with dangerous gases. Volcanic activity was constant, and the weather patterns were violent and unpredictable. How many species have attempted this concordat? Lisa asked. 12 different races over the past century, Kethver replied. All have succeeded with honor. All of them? Jake's eyes narrowed. Every single one? The Kriktar have never lost. A contestant, the gray alien said proudly. Their natural armor and adaptability make them superior survivors. The Veltar collective consciousness ensures perfect coordination among team members. The crystal being added, even the gentle Lyrians, succeeded through their advanced technology. They simply built their way out of any difficulty. Jake looked at Lisa. He could see her mind working, processing all the information. She was the scientist on their team, the one who understood how alien biology worked. But he was the soldier, the one who understood challenges and competition. What happens if we fail? He asked. Then you prove our point, Kethver said simply. A species from a Deathworld cannot adapt to civilized challenges. You would be forever barred from applying for council membership. And if we succeed, then we admit we may have misjudged humanity. Your application would receive serious consideration. Lisa turned away from the hologram and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the massive space station stretching. In all directions, ships from dozens of worlds docked at various ports. It was beautiful and advanced and completely alien. We would need to select a team, she said quietly. 5 members, Kethver confirmed. The same as every other species. Jake joined Lisa at the window. We do not have to do this, he said in a low voice. We could return to Earth and report. What happened? Let someone else decide. Lisa shook her head. Look at them, Jake. Look at how sure they are that we will fail. They have lived their whole lives on perfect worlds where nothing goes wrong. They think survival is about having the right technology or the right body shape. And you think differently? I think survival is about refusing to give up. It is about finding solutions when there are no good options. It is about working together when everything is falling apart. She paused and looked at him. It is about being human. Jake thought about his childhood in Florida. Hurricane season meant boarding up windows and riding out storms that could destroy everything you owned. But people did not just hide and hope for the best. They prepared, they adapted, and they rebuilt when necessary. Every year, the storms came, and every year, people found ways to survive them. He turned back to the waiting aliens. "We accept." Kethfer's 4 eyes widened slightly. "You do not wish to consult with your government? This decision will affect your entire species." "We are here as representatives of humanity," Jake said. "We can make this choice." The crystal being made its laughing sound again. "Excellent. You have 7 days to select your team and prepare. The transport to Kepler 442c departs on schedule." As the aliens prepared to leave, Kethvar paused at the door. "I am curious," he said. "What makes you so confident?" Jake smiled. "You want to test us on a world with bad weather, dangerous animals, and limited resources. Ambassador, you just described a typical Tuesday on Earth." After the aliens left, Lisa sat down heavily in her chair. "I hope you know what you just committed us to." "I know exactly what I did," Jake replied. "I just signed us up to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." Lisa pulled up her personal files on the room's computer system. She began scrolling through personnel records of humans currently on the station or available for rapid transport. "We need a diverse team," she said. "Military experience, scientific knowledge, technical skills." Jake nodded. "I already have some people in mind. Captain Ben Hayes from the Diplomatic Security Detail, Amy Foster from Special Operations, Dr. Ron Clark, the geologist who briefed us on planetary conditions. That gives us combat experience, survival skills, and geological expertise," Lisa said, "along with your engineering background and my biological knowledge." 5 humans against a planet that scares the aliens, Jake said. "I like our odds." The transport ship Galactic Unity was larger than any vessel humans had ever built. Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window in their preparation room and watched the stars shift as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Ahead of them, Kepler 442c hung in space like a bruised eye. "That is where we are going," said Captain Ben Hayes. He had joined their team 2 days ago, bringing 20 years of military experience and a calm manner that made everyone feel more confident. Dr. Lisa Park studied the planet through her scanner. "The storms are worse than the initial reports suggested," she said. "I am reading electrical activity that would scramble most electronic equipment." Amy Foster checked her equipment pack for the 3rd time. The small, tough woman had served in special operations in some of Earth's most dangerous places. "How are the other teams handling this?" she asked. Through the window, they could see other preparation areas where alien teams were getting ready. The Kriktar team consisted of 5 insect-like creatures, each one 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor. Their equipment was built into their bodies, making them look like living machines. "The Veltar team is interesting," said Dr. Ron Clark, their geologist. He pointed to another window where 5 jellyfish-like beings floated in a specialized container. "They share thoughts, so they function as one mind in 5 bodies." Jake watched a team of small, furry creatures with huge eyes loading what looked like a portable factory into their drop pod. The Lyrians brought enough technology to build a city. "And what did we bring?" Amy asked with a grin. Ben Hayes opened their equipment case. Inside were basic survival tools, emergency medical supplies, and standard environmental suits. Compared to the advanced gear the aliens carried, it looked primitive. "We brought ourselves," Jake said. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "All teams prepare for drop pod insertion. Planetary conditions are hostile. Surface temperature is currently minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit in the drop zone. Volcanic activity detected in sectors 7 and 12. Electromagnetic storms covering 40% of the surface." Lisa pulled up the weather data on her tablet. "This is going to be rough." "It gets worse," Ron said, studying his geological Scanner. The ground composition is unstable. Frequent seismic activity. The mountains are mostly volcanic, and the valleys flood regularly. Amy laughed. So it is like home, but with less oxygen and more things trying to kill us. The preparation room shook as their drop pod separated from the main ship. Through the window, Jake could see 4 other pods falling toward the planet. Each one contained a team of 5 beings who thought they understood survival. Drop pod 7. "This is Control," came a voice through their communicator. "You are experiencing guidance system interference. Prepare for rough landing." Ben Hayes strapped himself into the pilot's seat. "Everyone secure. This is going to hurt." The pod hit the atmosphere like a bullet hitting water. Fire surrounded them as they fell through layers of gas and storm clouds. Lightning struck their hull twice, sending sparks flying inside the cramped space. The temperature readouts spun wildly as they passed through different atmospheric layers. "Landing zone has changed," Ben announced, fighting with the controls. "We are going down in the mountain region." Through the chaos, Jake could see the surface rushing toward them. Jagged peaks covered in ice and snow filled the landscape. Volcanic vents glowed red in the distance, and steam rose from countless hot springs. It looked like Earth's most extreme environments all mixed together. The pod hit a snow-covered slope and bounced 3 times before sliding to a stop against a cluster of rocks. For a moment, nobody moved. And Amy Foster started laughing. "Well," she said, "that was exciting." Ben checked the pod systems. "We have minimal damage. Life support is working, but we need to get outside and assess our situation." Jake opened the external scanner. Air is breathable, but thin. Temperature is minus 35 degrees. Local time is early morning, so it will get warmer. "How much?" "Warmer?" Lisa asked. "Based on the data, maybe 80 degrees warmer by midday." Ron whistled. "So we go from freezing to burning in a few hours. That is going to make things interesting." They opened the pod's hatch and stepped onto the alien world. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe, even through their environmental suits. Wind howled across the mountainside, carrying the smell of sulfur from nearby volcanic vents. "First priority is shelter," Ben said. "Second is water. Third is food." Amy looked around at the barren landscape. "I do not see any trees for building materials." "No wood," Jake agreed, "but plenty of rock. And those volcanic vents mean heat sources." Lisa walked to the edge of their landing area and looked down. Into a valley. "There is water down there. I can see steam rising from what looks like hot springs." "Dangerous to reach," Ron observed. "The slope is unstable, and there are thermal vents all along the path." Jake studied the terrain with his engineer's eye. The mountains were harsh, but they offered protection from the wind. The volcanic activity meant geothermal energy they could tap. The hot springs meant water that was already heated. "This is not as bad as it looks," he said. "Are you insane?" Amy asked. "This place makes Antarctica look like a beach resort." "Think about it," Jake said. "We have heat from the planet itself. We have water that is already warm. We have rocks for building materials. We have volcanic glass for cutting tools." Ben nodded slowly. "He is right. This is not about surviving despite the environment. This is about using the environment to help us survive." Their communicators crackled with reports from other teams. The Kriktar had landed in a desert region and were struggling with the heat. The Veltar Collective had split up and was having trouble coordinating without their shared mental link working properly. The Lyrians had landed in a swamp where their technology was failing due to moisture and electrical interference. "Sounds like everyone is having problems," Lisa said. "Everyone except us," Jake replied. He was already planning their shelter, using the natural rock formations and geothermal vents to create a protected living space. Amy found a path down toward the hot springs that avoided the worst of the thermal vents. Water sources accessible. Dangerous, but accessible. Ron discovered mineral deposits in the rocks around their landing site. We have iron ore, sulfur compounds, and what looks like copper. With the right processing, we could make basic tools. Lisa set up her biological scanner to search for any local life forms. I am detecting movement in the lower valleys. Large creatures, probably adapted to the thermal conditions. Predators? Ben asked. Unknown. But anything that lives here has to be tough. As the sun climbed higher, the temperature began to rise rapidly. Within 2 hours, it had gone from -35 to +40 degrees. The aliens had warned them about the temperature swings, but experiencing it was different from reading about it. This is why the other teams are struggling, Jake realized. They are trying to fight the environment instead of working with it. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Look at the Kriktar. They landed in the desert and are trying to stay cool during the day. But the desert gets freezing at night. They are fighting both extremes. And the Lyrians? They brought technology to control their environment. But this planet destroys technology. They should be adapting to conditions, not trying to change them. Ben Hayes smiled. But we know how to adapt. We have been doing it our whole lives. Amy pointed to a protected area near a cluster of thermal vents. That spot would stay warm at night and not get too hot during the day. Natural temperature control. Perfect, Jake said. Let us build our new home. As they began work on their shelter, using rocks and volcanic heat to create a comfortable living space, none of them noticed the orbital monitors recording everything they did. The alien observers were already beginning to realize that their assumptions about human capabilities might be wrong. The Deathworld species was not just surviving their test. They were making it look easy. 2 weeks into their stay on Kepler 442c, the human team had built something that amazed the orbital observers. What had started as a simple shelter near the thermal vents had grown into a complex living system that worked with the planet instead of against it. Jake Morrison stood at the entrance to their cave system, watching the morning mist rise from the valley below. The caves they had found were not just holes in the rock. They were connected chambers that stayed naturally warm from geothermal heat and cool during the planet's burning days. Temperature inside is holding steady at 68 degrees, called Dr. Ron Clark from deeper in the cave system. The thermal regulation is working perfectly. Ron had discovered that the volcanic rock in their area contained natural insulation properties. By carefully selecting which passages to open and which to block, they had created a climate-controlled living space that required no outside power. Dr. Lisa Park emerged from one of the side chambers, her biological scanner in hand. I found something interesting, she announced. There are fungi growing in the deepest parts of the cave system. They are not only edible, but they are rich in proteins and vitamins. Any dangers? Asked Captain Ben Hayes. None that I can detect. The fungi seem to be the planet's way of recycling organic matter. They break down dead plant material and convert it into something nutritious. Amy Foster returned from her morning hunt, carrying a strange-looking creature that resembled a cross between a lizard and a bird. The acid spitters are predictable, she reported. They hunt in the early morning when the temperature is moderate. If we time it right, we can harvest their eggs without confrontation. The acid spitters were one of the planet's most dangerous predators. They were about the size of earth wolves, but they could spit a corrosive substance that could melt through metal. Most species would have avoided them completely. The humans had studied their behavior and turned them into a food source. How are the other teams doing? Jake asked. Ben checked their communication array, which Jake had rebuilt after the original equipment failed during an electromagnetic storm. The Kriktar are down to 3 members. They lost 2 trying to eat the local plant life. Turns out their stomachs cannot handle the chemical composition. The Veltar collective has split apart, Lisa added, without their mental link working properly. They are functioning as individuals for the first time in their evolutionary history. They do not know how to make decisions alone. Amy shook her head. The Lyrians requested emergency evacuation yesterday. Their technology failed completely, and they could not adapt without it. Jake was not surprised. He had watched the alien teams through their first week, and all of them had made the same mistake. They had tried to impose their home-world conditions on Kepler 442c instead of learning to work with what the planet offered. We need to check the water purification system, Ron said. The mineral content in the hot springs changes depending on volcanic activity. Jake had built the water system using principles he had learned during his military service in desert regions. Instead of trying to filter out all the minerals, he had created a system that removed only the harmful compounds while leaving beneficial minerals in place. The system used a series of settling pools connected by channels carved into the rock. The hot spring water flowed through volcanic sand and mineral deposits, naturally purifying itself. By the time it reached their storage areas, it was cleaner than most tap water on Earth. Production is up 20% from last week, Ron reported after checking the flow rates. We are producing more clean water than we can use. Good, Ben said. That gives us a safety margin for emergencies. Amy pointed toward the valley where she had been hunting. I have been tracking the larger predators. There is a pack of something big down there. I have not seen them directly, but their tracks are huge. Dangerous? Lisa asked. Everything on this planet is dangerous, but they seem to be territorial. As long as we stay in our area, they leave us alone. Jake climbed to the highest point of their cave system, where he had installed their long-range communication equipment. The view from up there showed the full scope of what they had accomplished. Their shelter was not just a place to hide from the planet's hostility. It was a thriving outpost that used every advantage the environment offered. The thermal vents provided heating and power for their equipment. The mineral-rich rocks gave them raw materials for tools and construction. The hot springs supplied unlimited clean water. Even the dangerous wildlife had become a resource through careful observation and planning. Jake, Ben called from below. We are getting a priority message from orbital control. Jake climbed down to their communication center. Ben handed him the headset, and he heard Ambassador Kethfer's voice coming through the static. Human team, this is orbital control. We are requesting a status report. This is Jake Morrison, he responded. All team members are healthy and operational. We have established sustainable shelter, food, and water sources. There was a long pause before Kethfer replied. Our instruments show significant construction activity at your location. Please explain. Jake looked around their cave system. They had carved channels for water flow, built storage areas for food and equipment, and even created a workshop where Ron was processing volcanic minerals into useful tools. We have made improvements to our shelter for long-term sustainability, Jake said. Long-term? Kethfor's voice sounded confused. The test period is only 60 days? We understand that, Jake replied, but we build things to last. Another pause. We also detect that you have established regular contact with local wildlife. This was not part of the mission parameters. Amy laughed from across the cave. Contact? We are hunting them. Hunting? Kethfer sounded alarmed. The acid spitters are extremely dangerous. How many team members have you lost to attacks? None, Jake said. We studied their behavior patterns and developed safe hunting techniques. The communication went silent for several minutes. Jake could imagine the alien observers trying to understand how the primitive humans had not only survived, but thrived in conditions that had broken every other species. "Human team," Cuthbert finally said, "we are impressed by your progress. However, we must warn you that you have reached the halfway point of your test. Conditions will become more challenging." "How so?" Ben asked. "The planet's seasonal patterns are beginning to shift. Storm intensity will increase. Volcanic activity will become more frequent. And the large predators will begin their mating season, making them more aggressive." Jake looked at his teammates. They had faced hurricanes, earthquakes, blizzards, and heat waves on Earth. They had served in combat zones where humans were trying to kill them. Angry alien animals did not seem like an insurmountable problem. "We understand," Jake said into the communicator. "We will adapt as necessary." "Adapt?" Cuthbert's voice held a note of disbelief. "These conditions would challenge even our most advanced survival specialists." Amy leaned toward the communicator. "Ambassador, with respect, your most advanced survival specialists have never had to live through a Florida hurricane season." After the communication ended, the team gathered around their food preparation area. Lisa had learned to cook the alien fungi in ways that made them taste almost like earth mushrooms. Amy's hunting had provided fresh protein. Ron had even found mineral deposits that could be processed into something resembling salt. "They still do not understand," Lisa said as they ate their dinner. "Understand what?" Ron asked. "They think we are surviving despite this planet's hostility," Jake explained. "They do not realize we are thriving because of it." Ben nodded. "Every challenge this world has thrown at us is something we have faced before on Earth. Extreme temperatures, dangerous wildlife, limited resources, hostile terrain. The difference is," Amy added, "we learned to see these things as problems to solve, not disasters to endure." Jake looked around at his teammates and felt a deep pride in what they had accomplished. They had not just passed the aliens' test. They had redefined what the test was supposed to measure. 30 more days, he said. "Let us show them what humans can really do." On the 58th day of their trial, Jake Morrison stood on the highest peak near their settlement and watched the sunrise paint the alien landscape in shades of gold and red. Below him, the valley steamed with thermal activity, and in the distance, he could see the other drop zones where alien teams had struggled and mostly failed. "Jake, you need to see this," called Dr. Lisa Park from their communications center. He climbed down to find his teammates gathered around their equipment. The communication array Jake had built was receiving multiple signals from the orbital monitoring station. Most of them were not meant for human ears. "What is it?" he asked. Captain Ben Hayes looked up from the console. "Emergency Council session. A Galactic Council is meeting right now to discuss our performance." Amy Foster grinned. "Are we in trouble?" "Listen to this," Lisa said, adjusting the frequency. Ambassador Cuthbert's voice came through the speakers, but he was not talking to them. He was addressing the full council. "The human readings cannot be correct," Cuthbert was saying. "No species adapts this quickly to such hostile conditions." Another voice, the crystal being they had met before, responded with its glass-breaking laughter. "Perhaps their instruments are malfunctioning. Deathworld species do not possess advanced survival capabilities." "I have reviewed the Data 17. Times came a new voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "The humans have not only survived, they have established a permanent settlement with renewable resources and defensive capabilities." Dr. Ron Clark looked up from his geological samples. "Defensive capabilities?" "The barrier system we built to keep the acid spitters away from our water source," Amy explained. "And the early warning system for volcanic activity." Jake had forgotten that the aliens were monitoring everything they did. What seemed like basic survival techniques to the humans appeared to be advanced engineering to species that had never faced real challenges. "Show me the visual records," demanded a voice Jake recognized as the floating jellyfish creature, Veltar. The communication array crackled, and suddenly they could see what the orbital monitors were showing the Council. It was an aerial view of their settlement, but Jake barely recognized it. From above, their cave system looked like a small city. The channels they had carved for water flow created a network of streams that fed into multiple reservoirs. The areas where they had cleared rocks and built walls formed protective barriers around their living spaces. The workshop where Ron processed minerals looked like an industrial facility. "This is what 58 days of human habitation looks like," Kethver said to the Council. "They have transformed a hostile environment into a thriving colony." "Impossible," said the crystal being. "Our most advanced terraforming equipment could not achieve these results in such a short time." "They did not use terraforming equipment," Veltar replied. "They used basic tools and their own labor. According to our scans, they have moved over 200 tons of rock and earth." Jake looked at his teammates. They had been working hard, but they had not thought of it as moving mountains. They were just doing what needed to be done. "The most disturbing aspect," continued another alien voice, "is their interaction with the native wildlife. They have established what can only be described as a hunting territory without eliminating the species they prey upon." Amy laughed quietly. "They make it sound like rocket science. We just do not kill more than the population can replace." "Furthermore," Kethver added, his voice strained, "they have created art." This statement was followed by silence from the Council. Jake could imagine the alien representatives trying to process this information. "Art?" asked the crystal being. "Cave. Paintings. Music. Storytelling sessions that our audio monitors have recorded. They are not merely surviving. They are maintaining cultural activities." Ben Hayes smiled. "Lisa's biology lectures, Amy's war stories, and Ron's geology songs." "You call those songs?" Amy asked with mock horror. "The point is," Lisa said seriously, "they cannot understand why we would waste time on non-survival activities." The Council discussion continued, and the humans listened as the aliens tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Every aspect of human behavior seemed to confuse them. "They share resources equally," reported one monitoring officer. "Even when supplies are limited, no individual hoards food or water. They take unnecessary risks to help each other," added another. "When their engineer was injured moving rocks, the others carried extra workload until he recovered." Jake remembered that day. He had strained his back lifting a boulder, and his teammates had insisted he rest while they continued the construction. Work. To him, it was just common sense. To the aliens, it was apparently bizarre behavior. "Most puzzling of all," Kethva continued, "they express satisfaction with their situation. Our psychological monitors indicate they are ... happy." The crystal being made its breaking glass sound again, but this time it seemed nervous rather than amused. "Happy? On a Deathworld that has killed or injured representatives from every other species. Not only happy," came Veltar's wind-like voice, "they express a desire to extend their stay beyond the 60-day requirement." This was true. Just yesterday, the team had discussed what would happen when the test period ended. They had built something remarkable on Kepler 442c, and none of them were eager to abandon it. "I move for immediate extraction of the human team," said a new voice. "They are clearly suffering from environmental psychosis. No rational species would want to remain on such a world." "Denied," said Kethver firmly. "The test period ends in 2 days. We will complete the evaluation as planned." The communication cut off, leaving the humans alone with their thoughts. "Environmental psychosis?" Ron asked. "They think we are crazy for liking it here. Are we crazy?" Lisa wondered aloud. "This place tried to kill us every day for almost 2 months." Jake looked around their settlement. The caves were warm and comfortable. The water system provided unlimited clean drinking water. The food sources were reliable and nutritious. The defensive systems kept them safe from predators. They had built a home in one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. Maybe we are crazy, he admitted. But it is a good kind of crazy. Amy stood up and walked to the cave entrance. You know what I realized? This place reminds me of Earth. Earth? Ben asked. How? Not the easy parts of Earth. The hard parts. The places where humans had to fight for everything they had. The places where only the strong and smart and stubborn survived. She was right, Jake realized. Kepler 442c was like Earth with all the safety nets removed. No cities to retreat to, no technology to rely on, no rescue services if things went wrong. Just humans and nature, locked in the eternal struggle that had shaped their species. The aliens do not understand, Lisa said. They think survival is about avoiding challenges. But for humans, survival is about overcoming them. On the final day of their test, the human team received a formal communication from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kethver's image appeared on their communication screen. His forearms gesturing in what they had learned was a sign of respect. Human team, he began. You have completed the survival concordat with unprecedented results. Thank you, Ben replied. It has been an educational experience. Educational, Kethver repeated slowly. Yes, it has been educational for all. Of us. He paused and looked at something off-screen before continuing. The Galactic Council has voted to accept humanity's application for membership. The humans looked at each other. After everything they had been through, the victory felt almost anticlimactic. However, Kethver continued, we have also voted to establish a new category of membership. You will be designated as a guardian species. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means, Kethver said, with what might have been respect in his voice, that when other species face challenges they cannot overcome, when worlds need to be settled that others consider impossible, when problems require solutions that stretch the limits of possibility ... we will call on humanity. Amy grinned. So we are the species you call when things get really bad? Precisely, Kethver confirmed. You have shown us that what we consider death worlds may simply be worlds that require a different kind of life to tame them. As the extraction ship approached to take them back to the civilized galaxy, Jake took one last look at their settlement. They had proven themselves worthy of membership in the galactic community, but more importantly, they had proven something to themselves. Humans were not the weakest species in the galaxy. They were the strongest, precisely because they had been forged in the crucible of a world that never gave them anything for free. Ready to go home? Ben asked. Jake smiled and shouldered his pack. After this, Earth is going to seem like a vacation resort. As their ship lifted off from Kepler 442c, carrying them back to a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again, Jake realized that they had done more than pass a test. They had redefined what it meant to be alive in a universe full of wonders and terrors. They had shown the galaxy what happens when you take a species from a death world and give them a chance to prove themselves. They had shown them what it meant to be human.